The forest had been unusually silent that morning, broken only by the soft rustle of leaves in the light breeze. Then came a faint, almost imperceptible sound, a hoarse moan that seemed swallowed by the dense undergrowth. The ranger team, patrolling the northern ridge, froze. Their eyes scanned the clearing ahead, where the trees opened into a pale, soft light. Something moved, though it was difficult to see at first, half hidden beneath the uneven earth. As they drew closer, the shape became clearer. A man lay buried up to his chest, soil and dried leaves pressing down against him. His arms stretched weakly, fingers scrabbling at the dirt as though each movement was a battle against an invisible force. The ground was damp and heavy, clinging to his clothes, his hair matted with mud and sweat. The forest seemed to hold its breath, as if aware that something delicate and fragile was trapped among its roots. Not far from the pit, a lion stirred. Golden eyes glinted in the shadow of a tree, reflecting the first streaks of morning light. Its body tensed, rippling muscles beneath tawny fur shifting in careful movements. A low, resonant rumble vibrated from its chest, almost blending with the man's weak gasps. The lion did not roar, it only observed, ears rotating toward the faint sound of struggle. Each heartbeat in the clearing seemed magnified, echoing against the trees and undergrowth. The rangers exchanged hurried whispers. "Careful, we can't startle him," one murmured. "Just gently, gently." Shovels were lowered slowly, their metal tips pressing against the soft earth with deliberate caution. Even the dirt seemed alive, resistant yet yielding under their careful movements. The man's chest rose and fell unevenly, each breath a shallow victory. His eyes were half-closed, pupils dilated, yet there was a spark of awareness that clung stubbornly beneath the dirt. Nearby, the lion circled once, nostrils flaring as it sniffed the air, tail flicking in tension. Every now and then, a soft grunt or snuffle escaped it, subtle, almost contemplative, as though it were judging the human's intentions. The ranger team continued digging, mindful of the silent observer, their hands trembling slightly with the gravity of the moment. Each spadeful of dirt removed brought a faint rustle of leaves and displaced soil, punctuating the quiet stillness of the forest. The air was thick with the mingled sense of damp earth, decaying leaves, and the musky presence of the lion. Birds remained frozen in the canopy, their small eyes watching, wings twitching. Insects hovered nearby, drawn to the warmth of the disturbed soil and the faint traces of human sweat. The man's fingers, now reaching upward with greater urgency, brushed against the lion's paw instinctively. The animal did not recoil. Its gaze remained steady, unwavering, a silent acknowledgement of the fragile life beneath the earth. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Every movement carried weight, every breath seemed to hang in the air longer than it should. The clearing, normally alive with forest sounds, was a stage for survival, tension measured not in noise but in quiet observation. As the rangers continued their careful excavation, the lion shifted slightly, leaning closer but keeping a protective distance, a silent sentinel ensuring no harm would come to the trapped man. The first rays of sunlight pierced the canopy, illuminating the half-buried figure and casting the lion's shadow across the clearing. The moment was almost surreal, a tableau of life, instinct, and human intervention intertwined. The man's shallow breaths quickened slightly, a sign of hope beneath the oppressive weight of soil. The rangers exchanged another glance, silently acknowledging the impossible calmness that had settled between man and lion. In that clearing, time seemed suspended. Soil, sweat, and fur mingled in a quiet symphony, and for the first time, the man's groaning voice carried clearly over the forest floor. He was still trapped, still struggling, but not entirely alone. The golden eyes watched, unblinking, a guardian from the wild witnessing a fragile life hanging by a thread. The man's chest heaved under the weight of dirt, each breath shallow and ragged. His hands clawed at the soil, scraping against roots and clumps of earth that resisted every movement. The forest, normally alive with rustling leaves and distant calls of birds, held an almost unnatural stillness. Even the wind seemed hesitant, as if afraid to disturb the delicate moment unfolding in the clearing. From the edge of the open space, the lion emerged, massive and deliberate. Each step was measured, paws sinking softly into the damp soil. Its golden eyes never left the trapped man, and a low, vibrating rumble emanated from its throat, a sound that spoke of both alertness and cautious consideration. There was no aggression in the stance, only an almost human-like awareness, as if it understood the fragility of the life beneath the dirt. The rangers exchanged silent glances, hearts pounding. "Don't make sudden movements," one whispered. "Let him guide us." The lion circled once, sniffing the air and pressing its paws against small ridges of soil that had shifted with the man struggling. The creature's presence was both unnerving and oddly comforting, a silent reminder of the untamed world observing their delicate rescue. As the rangers continued to dig, they moved carefully, guided not just by the man's faint movements but also by the lion's intuitive positioning. Whenever a pile of loose earth threatened to fall back, the lion shifted, subtly nudging it aside with a powerful swipe of its paw. Its head tilted, ears flicking, tail flicking rhythmically, a constant, quiet commentary on the human's actions. The forest smelled of damp soil, crushed leaves, and the faint, musky scent of the lion. Sunlight slanted through the canopy, illuminating the dust motes that rose in lazy swirls with each scrape of shovels. Birds stirred hesitantly, wings brushing against branches, their small chirps punctuating the tense silence. Insects hovered near the disturbed ground, drawn to the warmth and the faint human scent, their tiny wings adding another layer to the living symphony of the clearing. The trapped man groaned softly, reaching instinctively toward the lion. His fingers brushed against the fur, and the lion remained still, leaning slightly closer as if offering silent reassurance. The humans worked around the connection, careful not to disturb the delicate balance of trust forming between predator and prey, human and wild guardian. Minutes passed, stretching and bending time in a rhythm defined by breath and heartbeat. The man's struggle grew more desperate, each movement pulling him closer to freedom yet demanding careful attention. The lion's rumble deepened, vibrating through the soil beneath them, an unspoken encouragement that life was fragile, but survival was possible. "Almost there," whispered one ranger, voice low but firm. Each word seemed swallowed by the forest, yet carried enough weight to steady the man's trembling limbs. The lion's ears twitched, acknowledging the sound, its gaze never wavering. The presence of the massive creature had transformed the clearing, turning fear into a cautious partnership, the human hands digging, the wild eyes guiding, and the trapped man responding with every ounce of his strength. Sunlight shifted, slanting across the clearing in streaks of gold. Dust and soil danced in the shafts of light, mingling with the sweat and dampness that clung to every surface. The forest exhaled subtly, as though recognizing the first real signs of hope. The man's chest rose and fell with a slightly steadier rhythm, and for the first time, the rangers allowed themselves to believe that he might not remain buried for long. The lion stepped a fraction closer still, a silent sentinel guarding the fragile balance between life and death. Its low rumble continued, almost a heartbeat of the forest itself, anchoring the human's careful movements. In that suspended moment, there was no predator, no prey, only a shared awareness of life's fragility and the quiet, persistent power of instinct. The clearing held a tension so thick it seemed to press against the skin. Every rustle of leaves, every distant bird call, carried weight. The man's chest heaved with shallow breaths, each inhale a struggle against the weight of earth pressing down on him. His arms moved weakly, fingers clawing at clumps of dirt that refused to budge. The rangers leaned low, spades in hand, hearts pounding in measured rhythm with the man's ragged breathing. Suddenly, a small portion of the soil shifted unexpectedly, collapsing slightly into the shallow pit. The man's breath hitched, and a panicked groan escaped him. The rangers froze, eyes wide. If even a little more soil gave way, he could be trapped again. But before any human could react, the lion stepped forward. With a deliberate sweep of its massive paw, the lion pushed the loose earth away from the man's chest, moving with surprising precision. Its golden eyes locked onto the humans briefly, as if acknowledging their presence and purpose, before returning to the man. A low, rumbling growl vibrated through the clearing, not aggression, but a sound that carried authority, reassurance, and vigilance all at once. The man's trembling hand brushed instinctively against the lion's fur. The creature remained still, leaning slightly closer, its warmth a strange comfort. The rangers worked faster, guided by the lion's subtle movements, adjusting their shovels and hands to remove soil more safely. Each scoop of earth revealed more of the man's chest, his shoulders, until finally, his arms were free, quivering but functional. The forest around them seemed to shift with the moment. Sunlight filtered through the canopy, casting long shadows across the disturbed soil. The faint scent of crushed leaves mixed with the earthy aroma of wet dirt and the lion's musky presence, creating a sensory mosaic that anchored the humans and the trapped man to the present moment. Birds returned to tentative perches, their soft chirps adding quiet rhythm to the tense tableau. The man's voice broke the silence, weak but steady. I think I can." The words trailed into a gasp, each syllable a victory over exhaustion and fear. The lion's ears twitched, tail flicking in measured motion, as if signaling patience and readiness. It pressed slightly closer, its massive body forming an unspoken shield around him. Every movement was a careful dance between instinct and intent. The rangers adjusted their digging, mindful not to startle the creature or the man. Dirt fell in slow, controlled showers as spades scraped carefully against the edges of the pit. Time seemed to stretch, each second elongated by anticipation, fear, and the fragile hope that survival was within reach. Then, with one final push, the man's chest cleared the earth. His shoulders followed, trembling under the weight of fatigue and relief. The lion lowered its massive head, nose brushing lightly against the man's arm, as if confirming the success. The rumble in its throat softened, almost like a sigh. The human stepped back, breathless, allowing the lion's presence to dominate the clearing for a moment. The forest responded subtly. Leaves swayed gently in the breeze, insects hovered above the disturbed soil, and distant bird calls carried with renewed clarity. The clearing, once a place of tension and danger, felt transformed by trust and cooperation. Human and animal, life and instinct, had intersected in a way that defied words. The man finally pushed himself fully upright, weak knees bending under the weight of exhaustion. He glanced at the lion, golden eyes meeting his, and whispered a low, breathy thank you. The lion's tail flicked once, a slow, deliberate motion, before it stepped back, allowing the humans and man to fully occupy the clearing once again. In that suspended moment, there was no predator and no prey. Only a quiet acknowledgement of life, resilience, and the fragile bonds that can form in extraordinary circumstances. The forest seemed to exhale, leaving the clearing bathed in sunlight, dust, and the faint, lingering presence of a guardian who had stepped in when hope hung by a thread. The man's knees trembled as he pushed himself upright, brushing soil from his arms and chest. The morning sun had climbed higher, streaking the clearing with warm gold and illuminating the forest canopy in scattered patterns of light and shadow. Every breath he drew carried the scent of damp earth, crushed leaves, and the faint musky presence of the lion still lingering nearby. The clearing had settled into a quiet stillness. The man's shallow, uneven breathing was the only human sound, punctuated by the occasional soft rustle of leaves and the distant chirp of birds resuming their cautious songs. Insects hovered over the disturbed soil, wings catching sunlight as they moved lazily through the warm air. It was a forest moment suspended between tension and relief, fragile yet undeniable. The lion remained near the edge of the pit, muscles relaxed but alert. Its golden eyes tracked the man's movements, observing each gesture without judgment or interference. There was a dignity in the creature's presence, a quiet acknowledgement that this life had survived against the weight of circumstance and soil. The tail swept slowly back and forth, a subtle rhythm that harmonized with the slow heartbeat of the forest itself. The rangers stepped back, hands resting lightly on the man's shoulders, letting him catch his breath. "You're safe now," one murmured, voice low, almost reverent. The man nodded faintly, still shaken but alive, his gratitude unspoken but visible in every trembling gesture. His fingers lingered in the dirt on his arms, remnants of the struggle, and brushed briefly against the lion's fur, as if to affirm the silent bond that had been forged through fear, instinct, and survival. Sunlight filtered through the canopy in golden shafts, glinting off damp soil and illuminating the disturbed leaves scattered across the clearing. Dust and particles swirled in the air, catching the light in a slow, almost magical dance. The forest seemed to exhale, acknowledging that the moment had passed, that life had been preserved, and yet there remained a quiet wonder at how easily it might have been lost. The man straightened fully, shoulders aching, and glanced at the lion. The golden gaze met his, steady and unblinking. For a heartbeat, the clearing was suspended in mutual recognition. There were no words, only the shared understanding that life was fragile, miraculous, and sometimes held in the presence of something untamed and yet protective. A subtle breeze rustled through the trees, shifting the leaves above in a gentle whisper. The lion shifted its weight, muscles rippling beneath tawny fur, before stepping slowly back into the undergrowth. Its movement was deliberate, calm, a quiet retreat into the wild it had always belonged to. The man and the rangers watched in silence, each inhaling the forest air, feeling the lingering presence of the guardian who had intervened without fanfare or aggression. For a moment, the clearing seemed larger, filled not just with the scent of earth and sunlight but with a kind of reverent awe. The man's hands rested on his knees, body bent slightly from fatigue, yet his eyes remained on the lion as it disappeared into the shadows. A whisper escaped him, soft and deliberate, "Thank you." The wind carried it lightly, blending with the forest sounds, as if acknowledging both gratitude and the ongoing rhythm of life. And then, the clearing returned to itself. Leaves swayed, birds sang, and insects hovered in lazy arcs above the soil. Yet the memory of the lion remained, a silent guardian etched into the man's mind and the forest's quiet, enduring heartbeat. Survival had been preserved, trust had been earned, and in the quiet aftermath, the forest itself seemed to hold its breath in awe. The clearing returned to its quiet rhythm. Sunlight filtered through the canopy in gentle streams, illuminating the uneven soil, the scattered leaves, and the faint footprints left behind by both human and lion. The man, leaning against a sturdy tree to steady himself, inhaled deeply, tasting the mixture of damp earth, fresh air, and lingering musk. His body ached, every muscle fatigued from the struggle, but relief washed over him like a soft tide. The lion's figure emerged from the shadows at the edge of the clearing, moving with fluid grace through the undergrowth. Muscles rippled beneath tawny fur, eyes alert yet calm, a living reminder of the wild power that had intervened. It paused briefly, golden gaze sweeping across the humans and the man, tail flicking slowly in measured rhythm. There was no roar, no aggressive display, only the quiet acknowledgement of a bond formed through instinct, trust, and shared awareness. The rangers stepped back, hands still lightly on the man's shoulders, allowing him to take in the moment. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "We'll remember." The words carried weight, blending with the soft rustle of leaves and the distant songs of birds returning to the canopy. Each sound was magnified by the forest's lingering stillness, a chorus that celebrated survival without fanfare. The lion disappeared gradually into the dense underbrush, its presence diminishing but not forgotten. The faint crunch of leaves under massive paws echoed briefly before fading completely, leaving the clearing bathed in light and silence. The man's gaze followed it until it vanished entirely, and only then did he allow his shoulders to relax fully. A gentle breeze swept through the clearing, lifting loose leaves and carrying the earthy scent of the forest deeper into the trees. Insects hovered above the disturbed soil, wings catching the light, adding subtle movement to the quiet tableau. Sunlight shifted, highlighting the traces of the struggle, the flattened grasses, the disturbed soil, and the marks left by both man and lion. Each element told a story, unspoken yet vivid in its simplicity. The man straightened, brushing his hands over the soil on his arms and knees, as if to mark the moment he had survived. The rangers exchanged quiet nods, understanding the unspoken truth. Some events could never be fully explained, only remembered. The forest, once tense with danger, now held a calm energy, a subtle reverence for the fragile thread of life that had been preserved. As he turned to walk slowly toward the path leading back to safety, the man cast one final glance toward the shadows where the lion had vanished. It was a look of gratitude, awe, and quiet acknowledgement. The forest had witnessed something extraordinary, a rare intersection of instinct, courage, and survival. Though the lion had retreated into the wild, its presence lingered in memory, in the rhythm of the trees, in the scent of the soil, and in the stillness of the clearing itself. And so, life resumed its quiet course. Birds sang, leaves swayed, and the forest exhaled gently, holding the story close, a secret shared only with those who had been present to witness it. The man and the rangers walked onward, carrying the memory of a guardian whose intervention had saved a life, leaving them forever changed by the encounter with the untamed and the extraordinary.